Your flavor is utterly unique. So we have these planets with their gates and their lines and their colors and their tones and their bases. Every single one of them has that. So it's out of the scope of this class for me to explain everything to you today, but this is for your enrichment so that you know that what we're doing here is layering keynotes. Now, the most important thing I can tell you is that everything will work just fine when you operate in accordance with your strategy and honor your unique authoritative process. Okay, even though you have something that, but Laveena, my sun says I'm a hermit, but my Pluto says I'm an investigator. Those are two very different things, and everything comes into context and everything works perfectly. So you don't have to worry that you're going to get something wrong. You just do your best relative to being present and aware and vital for that other person that you're helping. We're focusing you now on being able to do the work of an analyst, because by the end of this semester, if you are finished with all three and you've been doing all of your homework and such and practicing and playing, you should feel comfortable with starting to do practice readings with people for pay. Now, you cannot put it up there that you are an analyst. But from the perspective, my perspective, heretical perspective, the moment that you feel you are ready, as long as you are transparent with your client, I don't see a problem with saying, hey, I operate on a donation basis, something like that. That's what I did personally in order to work myself through school, so to speak. So just remember to disclose at the beginning that you are a student still until you get your certification, and that will make anybody feel better about what they're doing, and of course charge accordingly. So when we're looking at the process of understanding color motivation, remember that this is for your enrichment, and it is not about you having to figure out how all of this works or be able to explain it to anybody else, okay? Because you're not a teacher, you don't have to be. You're just using keynotes and be inquisitive or have inquiry relative to how it all works because you don't know yet. And you can be okay with saying, here's what I know about this. Do you recognize that? Or is this familiar to you? Whatever it is that you're explaining, so that you can get the client's understanding of it on track with what you're attempting to get across. It does two things for you. If you're communicating with the client rather than sitting there feeling like you have to know it all and, you know, be able to tell everything very perfectly. If you tell the client, hey, I'm still a student and I know a lot of things, but the actual application, the practical experiential process, I'm still working on. So I'm going to ask you some questions and see if anything resonates with you. Their empowerment. Yeah, they're individual. Does that land with you? They're tribal. Does that ring any bells? Individual, empowerment. Can you see what I mean? Or have you experienced what I have personally, or what I've shared with you? I might tell a personal story if I see something very specific. Now, please don't get too caught up in that. Very specific, like we both have Saturn in the 33.6. And we're both projectors and we're both splits and we're both emotional. Then I'll start to go, you know, this is how it's been for me. And depending on what age they are, because it's 6. So be very careful about saying, oh, they have that. I know what that is. You know, so still come from a place of inquiry when it comes to describing it for the person. So we're doing our best to completely and deeply understand as much as we can the forces that create our lives. You know, the perspective of the passenger consciousness, the witness consciousness is unique. Okay, it's unique. And where the passenger lives is in the illusion, in the Maya. This whole Maya is deep, 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 deep illusion. So that's where we have to reach over and bring that person's attention back on what is unique and sovereign and true about them. Because that's where our passenger is able to be liberated from choice. Okay? Liberated from choice. So what does it mean to be liberated from choice? When you come from this place of integrity, where you allow your body to do its thing, your mind, letting go of running the show, has the ability to completely see, rather than trying to meddle in its own life. So that's what we're doing in order to wake people up. We're helping them come to a place of integrity inside themselves or in their process if they have a processing authority. Okay, so their color motivation, Ra made it very clear that he wanted analysts to go through a transformative experience. Okay, so color motivation is one of the most transformative gifts I can give you relative to you recognizing it. That's why we're going to go through another round of lecture and then put you all in groups if you want to, breakout rooms again, where you can discuss the true motivational frequency and see if anything else really triggers some awareness, some awakening inside of you with your fellow students. And if after today's breakout you still feel totally lost, then it's time to go deeper into either radical transformations clinics, which can be done in group, or to work with somebody, a holistic analyst, to make sure that you're following your decision-making strategy into taking care of your body the way that you're designed to, because that's going to be the catalyst for the transformative effect of what happens to you when you turn into the person that you were designed to be. You already are that, but when you make decisions in alignment, that's when the gifts unpack or unfold in the life. And that's why we want this to happen for you when it comes to your awareness process. So here on this slide, you see this little child. Are they blind or are they aware? Just type into the chat, please. Quite literally. Do you see them blind or aware? Right? Okay. So, next one. Blind or aware? Blind. Blind or aware? Do you notice what happens when you cry, when you shut down? Is this child educatable at this moment? Am I going to sit there and shake them and try to get some sense into them? Is that going to work? Or are they going to block me out? This is the devastation at the childhood level of being in transference. Okay? So it feels uncomfortable. Is this child uncomfortable or not? This child is uncomfortable. What we get really good at is masking the discomfort in the body by subjugating our body's needs to what our mind thinks we have to do. And so what happens on the cellular level when you stop forcing yourself into this state by making decisions that are not in alignment with your path and purpose, what happens is, we can breathe. I mean, just looking at their faces, can you feel the tightness in your chest? You know, we all have mirror neurons. Do you just want to go like this and go, you poor little thing, right? So I'm going to let go of that one. It's devastating. Can we all agree that color transference is devastating? Have you experimented with it this week? It's devastating to come from a place of inauthenticity or lack of integrity with your sovereign nature of being. So the most important signpost I can give you is the discomfort in the form. God, I can feel the waves of relief just looking at this silly little picture rather than those children, those poor children crying. What people tend to do, adults tend to do, is hide the crying, but there may be some raging inside or some discomfort, and they force and they push, and then they don't get their life. So when you are in transference, you're not able to see. You're dumb, deaf, and blind. You lose your cognitive intelligence across all forms, all boards. So what happens is when you make decisions from that, you are in complete shutdown. You can't take in new information. That's the result of color transference. And that's why we started off with it last week, because you're more likely to recognize what it's like to not be in integrity, because the vast majority of the world is operating out of integrity. And so to remember for you, this is not so much for your readings, because it takes many more years, 2.5 more years, besides the 3.5 that you are studying human design to become a certified analyst, 2.5 more years to master this area of the knowledge, at least enough to where you're not doing damage to people. This is why we ask people to really go through the course materials and practice, but be careful, because we want you to know that you are deconditioning still all the way up to 7 years. And guess what? In 7 years, when you make your new cycle, whenever that is for you, it's another deconditioning round, because we're constantly being conditioned. So this area of the knowledge, please remember, it can be very blind when you are not coming from a place of having precise birth time. If you don't have precise birth time, don't go to this level of the knowledge. Double check with your clients when you start to practice. Some of you are in differentiation degree program. Double check with your clients. Make sure it's a verified piece of data that they're getting, not just somebody said I was born around noon, and then also look at that voice made me laugh. Look at the deeper layers and double check they're not too close to some place that will shift. So dualistic spectrums. What is the dualistic spectrum? You guys remember how lines and colors, they harmonize on the line side, transfer or get distracted. Those are technical terms that we use. So that's the dualistic spectrum. I'll show you again in a different place, but just remember that we are aware through dualistic spectrums. For PTL1, please do not put color motivation in your homework assignments. I'm going to say it again. Do not put color motivation in your homework assignments, even if you are in DD, okay? Because over there at the differentiation degree program, practice that there, not here. Here it's for your personal enrichment to discuss with each other. You can talk about it in class, but please don't put it in your homework assignments or do it with other people unless you're also in that DD program over there, because you be your own authority. But I need to say the things that I'm supposed to say. Ra wanted elements of this brought into PTL1. And you're looking at something that I personally also brought into cartography because he wanted an introduction there. But there's some sound coming down the pipeline that they might get rid of that relative to changing things because of lots of reasons. So I won't go there. But from the perspective of you understanding this, remember this is for you, this is for the client, and so that you don't mistakenly or accidentally condition them. Wrongly or incorrectly, distract them or transfer them. And that's so that be a little bit more mindful or careful about how deep the rabbit hole goes, and dip your toes in the water for yourself and experiment, try it and see, but take your time to learn it thoroughly before you try to teach this. The reason I'm going into this is because if you don't listen to me, you may mistakenly put information out there, start to make YouTube videos and teach everybody color motivation when you don't necessarily know what you're talking about yet. Please don't do that. Okay? That's for the 2% that maybe aren't ready, but will do it anyway, failing forward, like 6 lines in their first 30 years or third lines tend to do. So, color motivation. We are going to see relative to your brain-body system or your mind, that when you have a deep deconditioning, it leads us to the potential of uniqueness, which uniqueness brings differentiation. It also brings different health issues. That means then, in 7 years, when you've deconditioned and you've been experimenting with PHS, you may find yourself, if you still go to doctors, my husband and I don't, not unless we're dying, unless we really have to. We're our own authority, so we do our own thing. So from the perspective of the health, a well-being of the body, you're going to get differentiated diseases as well, unique to you. And on the other side of that, the mind itself, there are no rules for a 9-centered human being that is unique. Its mind is going to do its thing. It's going to be unique. It's going to be different. We have the science of differentiation here, and there's no way we can accurately, precisely way down the line when somebody's, let's say, been raised correctly from birth. Their uniqueness is off the charts. It's not something that we can say, hey, this is this, because they won't resonate with it. Sometimes you find people come to human design and they're rare, but it happens, where they don't actually understand or recognize the very generalities of the homogenized self. Okay, so what happens then is either I'm having a miscommunication issue with them, they cannot understand what I'm saying, or I can't understand what they're saying for whatever reason, or they really have surmounted that issue in their life. Maybe when a lot of times I'll hear people say, yeah, maybe when I was younger, but now no problem there, because they've deconditioned. So from the perspective of understanding this material for yourself, the continuation of this starts next week, the transformations, radical transformations, if you want to join. And Emerge is a 1-year program that I only do by demand or on demand relative to getting a small group together. This one has no limits. This one has limits as far as who can show up for that. I do give preference to my PTL1 students because I know that you need this relative to when you're ready, okay? So other resources you can go into learning about this information, the Differentiation lectures book, Lecture 2, the 4 Transformations, and Radical Transformations with any variable teacher, not just me. Any sessions with a differentiation degree practitioner, you're going to look for holistic analyst, okay? So a holistic analyst is someone that is above and beyond the DDP. That's 1 more semester on how to do that. That's what I would suggest for all of you since you're going through the training, the professional training. Look for a holistic analyst. Okay, and then above that is a variable teacher. That's what I have to teach the radical transformation clinics. So other resources, the Human Design System, a complete guidebook, Lecture 13, actually has information on the deeper layers. And in Jovian Archive, the lectures and videos, you can use the search box to find Raising Children According to Their Design, Transformation and Food, Nutrition, Birth to Saturn, the True Self and Diet video, as well as Nurturing a Unique Being audio. Those are the materials that have this information at the basis level if you want to hear it from raw. And then if you want to learn how to do this work, the differentiation degree at IHDS is the way to be able to attune to this material from the professional level. And it only starts once every few years. Jovian Archive invited me to teach classes at Jovian Archive when they release the new site next year. So I can teach anything I want relative to requests. I have been given full permission to teach anything I want. Okay, anyway. From the perspective of the advanced imaging chart, when you look at this advanced imaging chart, notice how there are motivation, transference, and trajectory. Okay, motivation, transference, and trajectory are coming from here. I'm not going to explain trajectory to you today. I do a little bit of an intro to it in the 6 as a bonus class, the 6 class of Radical Transformations Clinic. But for now, it's enough to just know where this material is coming from, the gift of how precise this material is relative to being able to map out someone's genetic code or structure of how they're here, taking in the experience of being life, giving that awareness out to others. It's part of your outer authority relative to what you're giving as the unique differentiated point of view. Our whole path and purpose, those of us who are mind fulfillment, being able to communicate or commune with another person. That's a real big gift relative to what we're doing, because now you know there's a very specific way we can break through to that passenger consciousness. And it is all about first the process of aligning to the vehicle, the form. The mind is overlaid on top of the form, okay? And the form is the one that has this process of being able to attune to what it is here for. And you're just mind, you as in what you think of as yourself, your mind is along for the ride. And that's very hard for most people to shatter their concept of self. Where is the I in this person's design? Please tell me, where's the I? There's 2 places the I is. Brianna says it's an incredible course. Yeah. Incarnation Cross, thank you. Where's the other eye? The false eye. Where's the other eye? The openness. So the personality consciousness, all of this stuff in black is what you think of as yourself. And it's in combination with the openness, the ego eye that you think of as yourself. And when you take that personally, it can be very damaging, painful. Only the not self suffers, quote unquote, according to Ra. So from the perspective of being able to really use this information, really use this information, we have to stop living through what we think of as ourselves, which is just the mind, just the illusion, making decisions from the mind because it's contaminated by all the openness. Okay, that's what strategy and authority does for you. Now, look at this chart. You see the right facing variable arrow up here. This means then that this person has been conditioned from birth, way more sensitive. You can see it's a repeating pattern, totally open over here in 3 centers. And then we have some undefined functions centers. And then we have also the variable arrow that is incredibly sensitive. She's got one of those that is difficult, the twisties, as far as the arrows are concerned. So there's a challenging time in this life, but she was built for it. Okay, you're built for the courses that you're going to take in life where those planetary life aspects are out there teaching you something about you in your life context. So it's not that conditioning is bad, it's just that conditioning is relative to you making decisions that you can trust. You making decisions that you can trust, you'll be in the right place at the right time, rather than trying to force yourself into a place that isn't right for you or with people that are not right for you. So, cognition is a term that we use for tone. So link the two terms, tonal cognition. Cognition is about your ability to be attuned to give your gifts to the world with intelligence. The moment that you are transferred, all those little screaming kids, they are not intelligent. They're deaf, dumb, and blind relative to that cognition being switched off. It's off. It's not accessible. And that's what happens to you every time you make a decision that is out of integrity with what you came here for. Every time. You are lacking the cognitive difference that makes you unique. So you remember these processes relative to last week. Getting in touch or in contact with our own passenger. Remember, I'm speaking to you now, not to you trying to teach your clients this. Getting in touch with your own passenger is about the recognition of what happens to you when you are transferred. Why we talked about it last week. And this week, what I want you to do in breakout room is talk about the correct motivational frequency relative to how you are experiencing yourself in alignment. If you're new at this, anywhere under 3.5 years, is still new at this, and you don't have any recognition of it, please don't worry. It takes the full 7 years to fully decondition and to realign the form from a cellular nature, matrix, structure. So take your time with it. It's okay. Don't feel like you have to be ahead of the game. Don't try to rush this. Your process is your own. It shows us the nature of how we think relative to how we experience our world and our life. So think back to those children. And if you're running around, this was Laveena before human design got a hold, self-medicating, so on prescription drugs at times, but I didn't like those, so mostly I was self-medicating with alternative, we'll say it nicely, drugs. From the perspective of you being like that, you might not be looking like that, but on the inside, you're like that. You're not taking in information. If you talk to my husband before human design, him describing to you what I was like, half of the words he would talk to me about, trying to give me a compliment, and I'd freak out and shut down. That was how bad it was inside of my head about myself. Mistakenly identifying with all of the pain and suffering of the perceived flaws or misidentification with what's wrong with me or what's wrong with them, because that's the way that this mind worked. So how you think is dependent upon your internal framework of what you perceive in your reality. And until you shift your mistaken identity or identifying with the false self, until you shift that, you're going to be locked into the illusion, the Maya, and the confusion of you not being in integrity with your being. It's just an unfortunate fact of life relative to this system. It's very, very cut and dry, precise, relative to being off track. On track, deconditioned, you're unique, hallelujah, congratulations, But from the perspective of being locked into the illusion, it's very predictable. The mental distortions, one of the reasons why Laveena loves the openness relative to learning about it, because it's easy to predict. It's kind of like the magic trick. You pull it out of the hat, look at this rabbit. Oh yeah, that's me. It's not you. Actually, it's not. So I'm going to read something from PHS and Awakening the Body, because I want you to know this part. How do we think? What is mind? Quote, human design is predicated on the transformation of the form. No transformation of the form, no transformation of the consciousness. So no transformation of the form, no potential for awareness. No transformation of the form. You can kiss concepts like enlightenment goodbye, because everything about what it is for us to be here begins with these vehicles. So again, I'm going to warn you, however many times I've said this, I'm going to warn you again. If you do not recognize your either motivational frequency, or if you take the class this weekend, or back in the day, remember when we went through perception or seeing? If you don't recognize either of those, no worries. It's a signpost saying, go work with the form. We've got to work with the form. So the mind, how do we begin with unlocking the key to your enlightened mind? And enlightenment, all it is complete, utter self-acceptance and love. That's the new modern enlightenment. Rather than trying to think of it as an exalted state where you're floating on a mountain and you're glowing. This is about the embodiment of the form in this 9-centered human being. It's a very different construct than what the 7-centered were all about back in the day. So what is mind? The mind says I. Okay, when you hear yourself say we, that's either tribal stuff, it's either the awareness, openness, taking life in, or from the context of the nodes, that's we. Nodes are we. The I is something else relative to your awareness, and your awareness is unique, utterly unique. The mind says I. So cognition is a byproduct of correct color motivation. Color motivation, what I'm taking you into, it educates and trains your mind to observe. The observational process of yourself, when you are detached from blame, shame, guilt, fault, any of those things being something wrong relative to you or them, because it is what it is. It simply is what it is. So can you see without an agenda? Can you allow this body to be what it is? Yes, this morning I bitched and moaned about whatever. And I didn't take it personally, because it's not personal. When you're in a relational dynamic, you become what the two of you are together. And there is no choice in that. If you're in a conversation with a person and you're getting all amped up and uncomfortable, remember, no choice in that. Mechanics are what they are, and you're going to learn that in next semester if it's correct for you to continue. So, in order to understand these processes, I did fix that dropped off, oops. From the perspective of where we're at 4 here. So if you have not had time to experiment with your brain-body system and digestion, how you take in life, this may not be recognizable, no worries. But once you get on track, the body color doesn't transfer when you are aligned. It doesn't. It is locked in to its process, with some rare exceptions. Can't go into that now. Okay, so from the perspective of longevity or your body in the correct environment, you're going to have more of a glide. You're going to feel more comfortable, not only in your own skin when you decondition, digestion, brain, body system, but also in the environmental context of where you are. And then we see things more clearly. And then we have the motivation or the outer authoritative process to be able to give to others without the agenda that comes with the machinations and distortions of the mind trying to get something from the other person that is not correct, that is not a byproduct of strategy and authority. Seeing from experience, the understanding or the comprehension, the grasping of some of this stuff, it can only happen through your experiential process. So don't worry. Oh, there's the transformation. I up here, we down here, just to remind you. Okay, there's a lot of things going on in this. This is the control panel, Ra would call it. I love it, the control panel. Because it does give us an incredible amount of variability and our ability to comprehend what's going on there. That's the work of the DDP people, the holistic analysts and variable teachers. So here is Darshana's control panel. And information, when you're taking in life, is like food. It's mind food. Okay, anybody, a person standing in front of you, and I'm hugging my little daughter, I'm taking her in as an information feed. Literally, because I personally am a projector. I'm designed to focus, penetrate, and absorb. So if I over-identify with her and take on her stuff and make decisions with it, off track. Oops. But if I allow myself to be aware and open to receive, yet non-identified with her stuff as mine, then I can know who she is. And that's what projectors are here for. So when we take in information, what we take in turns into thought through the agency of motivation. Motivation is something that is utterly unique to each of us because our crystals of consciousness are all different shapes. Think about that. That's why there's no rules for a nine-centered, deconditioned being. Okay? No rules. They are unique. From the perspective of looking at this thought, her mind, see the mental broadcasting of her awareness in a gate, okay? Having the ability, or its assessment, the ability to experiment with that gate because it's her mental processing. It's organic to her. She doesn't have to try and figure it out and make words to sound like what she is. Laveena's mistake back in the day. Oh, I'm motivated for this, so I'm going to say that. Yeah, no, just watch it shift, okay? So hers is desire, like mine. Both of us desire motivated projectors. Security is the cognitive effect here. When we are aware and we are operating in integrity, security is the mental cognition. But what happens is, when we are not in alignment, all of that is wiped out. It's gone out the window. So here's what gives you that effect. Conditioning comes from, first, not operating in alignment. Personality color transference, when she gets transferred to innocence. The personality view distraction also gets her transferred. Incorrect digestion on the brain-body system, not taking in life, not just food, but life correctly. A frictionful environment, she's not designed to be there, but she's forcing herself to be there because her mind says, I have to, I must, I should, whatever the case may be relative to it's convincing or persuading her to not pay attention to the spontaneous, instinctive, pattern-oriented recognitions of her splenic center. Openness brings conditioning. Splits bring more conditioning, focused, concentrated conditioning. And of course, again, no strategy and authority. And when you're sleeping in someone else's aura, bam, anybody's aura, bam, you've got conditioning. And the wrong people bring conditioning. Anything brings conditioning, really. We don't want to get away from it. We want to take in the right, correct conditioning that is absolutely key to our fulfillment of purpose in some of our cases. Anybody else have undefined sun or earth on either side? Conditioning helps us to learn about that activation with others in the right context. Okay? Our fulfillment of purpose in the right context with the right people. So color motivation, what happens is when you are in a not self-dysfunctional state, that's when you're blind. But with the correct color motivation, when you're operating in alignment and integrity, you are now taken out of the not yourself dysfunctional state. So instead of being in the homogenized mass that provides the medium for all kinds of ailments, everybody getting the same dang disease, you may get sick. You likely have it in the stars to have some kind of challenge or issue. We can see planetary activations moving over. Certain planetary activations in your design creates illness. It's not your fault. But that illness will be specific to you, your body, what you're learning and developing and growing through. How do you face those challenges with grace if that's your design, or with spirit, or whatever the case may be? Now, 7 years again or more into your process, the doctor is not necessarily going to know exactly what it is that you're dealing with because they're not trained to diagnose differentiated illness. The human species immune system is on the decay anyway. So as there are more and more diseases popping up anyway, you need to be your own authority relative to what's correct for you to take advantage of, to be responsible for. There's so much information now. You can find people relative to being an outer authority on something instead of going to a general practitioner of allopathic medicine. Those of you with undefined splenic centers, be more sensitive and potentially able to be attuned to lighter methodologies of taking care of the body, the holistic medicine or energy medicines. Just experiment, try it and see. Don't go off your meds. Be your own authority. So when you're operating correctly, uniquely, your immune system is unique. Everything about you is unique. So the homogenized dangers are not your dangers, not necessarily. Remember, you go into a restaurant, you immediately follow your spleen and turn around and walk the other way, no matter what everybody else wants to do. That's you following your authority. But you start to turn around and instead of walking the other way, you go, oh, but my daughter really wanted to come to this restaurant, or whatever the case. My family really wanted to come to we always come to this restaurant. But your spleen told you something else. Boom, out of here. The nice thing about having people, friends on your fractal or your family being able to help you because they know relative to each other, we're all in the experiment. They know that there's something odd about you. Everybody will know there's something odd or unique or different about you when you really surrender to this form and this vehicle without having to explain. Not in the moment, like, out of here. Okay. They go, wait, what? Where are you going? Okay. What happened? Oh, okay. It's not healthy for you. Fine. Let's go to that other place. I didn't like the smell in there. Anyway, somebody with smell cognition. So it's not your dangers anymore. It's you and your process. You get your life. And when you get your life, now you have the potential for unique differentiation that is more likely the more aligned that you are. So uniqueness, differentiation, health. That's number one as far as the biggest byproduct of what you're going to encounter. Some people, I'll tell you, some bodies, incredibly dramatic. Other bodies, like, no big deal. Maybe it's a longer process. So it depends on their process, whatever it is. So remember, with the personality and design crystal, we're looking at very, very specific to you cognitive potentials, because the crystal, they're not all the same shape. The internal cognitive potential, the tone right there, the internal structure is your intelligence, your unique intelligence. So we speak of a consciousness field relative to the data stream. It becomes aware when it's filtered through us, because we are the ones being aware of it, filtering it through our uniqueness, our differentiated forms. So a consciousness field without including the presence of the crystals of consciousness, is a dead consciousness field. But there's crystals everywhere. There's crystals in every cell. There's crystals in every blade of grass. There's crystals everywhere. Okay, so from the perspective of mechanics, when we look at this particular personality design crystal, every single one of them, though, has that same structure of a neutrino stream. Base is the entry frequency, tone is the inner, exit is the color. So everybody still has that process, but the internal structure is different. So color is the thing that is easily transferred because it's the exit frequency. It's most easily distorted, okay, distorted. And that's going to show up differently depending on all of the specificities of you and your design. Human design brings the understanding that the consciousness field is deeply concentrated through form. Why? Because the consciousness field going into this piece of meat and flesh through the body, which is the life, that is the only form that the consciousness field can operate through. Physical form. Every cell in your body with a crystal. Okay? So it's a very different way of understanding life, that we are all connected to everything all the time through this consciousness data stream that is constantly bombarding us. And when you're looking at the crystals of consciousness, it's a neutrino ocean. A neutrino, or I would call it the beam stream. So this beam stream can only be interpreted through the crystal at the exit frequency relative to it being perfect. Color is always perfect. It's perfect, but the form may not be operating in integrity or alignment. And that's why we put so much emphasis on strategy and authority, because the form is what makes the difference relative to how it's operating, relative to us purely translating that neutrino stream as it goes through us. So think about this. All of us going through whatever cycles of experience that we're going through. Okay, that's why there's no comparison. You're unique, and so is the stream that you're going through. Right? I'm here, you're there. I have a different cycle, layers and layers of cycles. My Saturn, Uranus I'm going through, Chiron that I'm feeling. I'm in the squeeze. So every single one of us has a unique, differentiated perspective, potentially, that we can give to another. And then you receive it and you take with it what you will. You'll only remember this much. That's why I say practice. Go turn around and start talking about it with others as soon as you can. Because that's really where you're going to start to speak the language. Can you imagine taking a Spanish class without ever talking it? That's why we give homework, so you can practice. Please take the pressure off. No grading, okay? Pass or fail. And if you don't pass, oh well, let's try again, you know? Okay, so if you can't talk 10 minutes about one chart without having to research it, like an overview, then we have a problem. So please let me know if you do have a privately, of course, so that I can make sure that we get some information into you relative to wherever you're finding challenges with the material or understanding the material. Okay, really, it's not a problem to ask for help, to ask Laveena or any of your, if you don't want to ask Laveena or admit to Laveena, I understand, because I'm getting complaints through my assistants, or they're reporting to me what they're noticing, so that I can make this better for you. It's just for you. Of course, me, because I like being able to give you a higher standard of education. Just look at your design. And as you look at your design relative to the experience of living your design, being your design, if you are having a hard time, don't take it personal. It's not your fault. There is no choice. Did you hear that before? Do you understand no choice? Does anybody not understand no choice? I remember not understanding no choice for years. I remember hearing about it from Facebook. Somebody said, no choice, said the voice. I was like, wait, what? I was here. Law of attraction background. That's why I create my own reality. That was me before human design. So when you filter or interpret the consciousness stream, it's going to be unique to you, your process. And it's not necessarily that you have to share everything that you're processing. Right timing, right? Okay, let me just double check. Anybody respond to that one? No? Okay. You can message me privately if you don't know. Now, the infrastructure of the crystal, again, unique to you, okay? Unique base, tone, color. It's all unique to you relative to you and your process of those informational data streams, feeds, if you will, neutrino beam streams bombarding you all the time. So what are you going to take from what I'm doing? It makes me think that it might come across as you're picking and choosing, like, oh, I'm selecting. But hey, guess what? My body is doing this to try to communicate the message to you. And the body is the life, and the body is the transmitter of information, not just the mental concepts. So when we have a personality and a design crystal of consciousness, this dualistic structure that we live in, these two crystals of consciousness that filter the beam streams or the person or whatever it is that you're encountering. The black is the thing that you are making decisions from, unless you are more often than not in your success, satisfaction, peace, surprise. Evidence, okay? If you are in frustration, anger, bitterness, disappointment, go back to the body. The body is the life. It is the form. It is the structure that dominates relative to you being in alignment. Passenger consciousness means the passenger, the witness, the I inside of the head is just there to see. And when you let go of making mental decisions, the form is aligned. Very different. Okay? Our forms system for cognition is where this all begins. Some of you may be able to identify the black without going to the red first. That's if your red brain body system is facing to the left, then you're more likely to be able to recognize what I'm telling you from this as far as for yourself. So no comparison. Okay? Just because you don't understand it yet does not mean that there's anything wrong with you. Time. It takes time. Every crystal is different relative to the internal structure. And again, look at the unique difference depending on the moment of imprint. Okay, so it's going to be one of those places, and every single one of us is going to filter the consciousness data stream differently because the combination of the design and the personality and internal structures being utterly unique is going to be different. So that's why when people share, if you share something and it's unique to you, wonderful. You don't need applause or congratulations. It's you. You don't need anybody to agree with you. It's you and your process. So that's why when you have a process that you're sharing or giving to another, you don't have to have other people who have that say, yes, I agree. They will probably at the beginning if they, have the similar path or structure or years in the experiment and dedication to the process of experimenting. But there is no judgment here relative to you and your shares. Your shares are perfect. They are what they are. So don't feel, I know all of us who are 3, and anybody who's a 6 in their first 30 years or just finishing off or still in that process of the growing pains, I like to call the 30s. Your mind is really, really, really hard on yourself. And if you come from that place of awareness, that the third line mind is, or body or whatever, is really hard on itself. If I could just give everybody who's a 3 a virtual hug and say, hey, it's okay. It's okay. Totally, I get it. Just to know that about yourself and about your process and that there's no judgment here. It's not about you having to have outside approval, okay? No need for outside approval. Good boy, good girl. None of that here. So your personality and design crystal, utterly unique to you. That magnetic monopole holding us together in the illusion of our separateness from the totality of existence means that from the perspective of each of these streams that are being held together is that what you are when you're giving your uniqueness to another is something that has never been seen before on this planet. So there's no comparison. There's absolutely no comparison to you and your process from anybody else. It's utterly unique. Okay? So personality and design crystals of consciousness. These are the prime crystals. Because remember, I've got crystals in all of my cells of my body. That's a lot. But when we're talking about human design analysis, we're looking at something that is everywhere. In form, there are crystals, but here and now, we're talking to the passenger. Yeah, we're doing our best to give you the awareness that it takes to liberate your mind from choice so that you're not trying to figure out how it works for yourself, projector. We can tell all kinds of stories. I still find myself telling stories. Yeah, because it's what I'm recognizing. But from the perspective of, is it really though? Mind, it could change. We don't know. I don't know anyway. From the perspective of what happens. You with a defined ashna, head ashna, you might have a real clear-cut certainty. And hallelujah, that's your process. Wonderful for you. Okay? So, once the body is operating in alignment with the form, the design doesn't transfer. The mind does. All other life forms have a design. This is actually, Ra gave us the design of forms, but he called it human design because humans are inherently self-centered or self-ish in this first line era. So what you're looking at now, every other life form has a design, their nature. Okay? Your process is utterly unique. So these beam streams, neutrino data streams, being unique to you, when you go through your life cycles, in your life process, in your relational dynamics, and you really know your quote-unquote stuff as far as what your design is like relative to you and life or others. When you start, this is what I remember, when you start to see the patterns and orientation of how you get upset and pissed off at that one, and you see it clearly in the design, that's why with any of you who have been having trouble with anybody else in your life, look at your charts together. We're going to start doing that next semester in cycles. You're going to really see how we are choiceless. Okay, that consciousness data stream field of the reality contextually with life, what we're growing through, what we're developing through. That's what cycles are, a developmental process that sometimes brings people. You're going to see the no choice of it and you'll laugh. You'll go, she has no choice to be like that. Speaking from experience, oh my gosh, she cannot help but just flap her lips at me. Better for me not to be there because I don't want to have any responsibility for what she tells me or what she wants me to hold as a secret because I know I can't. Once my loyalty is placed with someone, that's my person. And when that person, other person, is trying to undermine the person that I am working for or with, it's not going to work. So I can't, sorry, bonds made and broken, not healthy for me to try and fix whatever it is that you think is wrong. Can't do it. And so when we come from a place of authenticity rather than inauthenticity, that same situation before human design, Laveena would take the information in from the other, hold it, and have such a huge problem, such a problem that I couldn't talk to the other person that the person was complaining to me, bitching and moaning, shaming and blaming about. I couldn't talk to her. But now that I have the relationship with her, with this other person wanting to get back into my life, it just couldn't do it. It felt really uncomfortable. My body wouldn't let me. So it's here with the form where we make decisions that are in alignment with us ourselves, where we finally have the healing of the self. Your mind needs to be broken down bit by bit, deconstructed, and rebuilt through operating in alignment. And that's why it takes so many years to decondition. Your body, your cells turn over 7 years. So it always makes me laugh when people say, I've been working on this for my whole life. You've been working on your not self is what you've been working on for the most part, unless they happened to naturally slide in. Some people do in the experiment of reading lots of charts. They're like, oh yeah, I already do that. no big deal with their dietary regimen or their decision-making process. Once in a while, yeah. And still, there is this process of, it's like a reformat or a hard reboot of the mind. And they come in waves. They come in a cycle of experience for all of us that are cyclical. Or they might just bust through the crack of the facade of the not self. Who would that be? Yeah, the pulse people. Or it's a pattern. Now, everybody has a specific set of not only their genetic potentials, but also the transits that are coming in. So we can't predict it when the shattering is going to happen. This is one of those places where the shattering happens with your attunement to yourself.